All right, so get ready because today we are going deep into one of Charles Dickens's novels, Martin Chuzzlewit.
Ah,
And, it's
okay.
one that I think a lot of people maybe haven't read.
It's not as popular as some of his others.
Right. It's not like A Tale of Two Cities or A Great Expectations or even a Nicholas Nickleby.
Right.
So we're
Right.
gonna dive deep into this,
Yeah.
and we're gonna be looking, of course, as always, at the Wikipedia entry for Martin Chuzzlewit.
Mhm.
And this is going to be a fun one because this book has a lot going on.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. So we're gonna try to unpack all of the different threads,
Yeah.
different plot points, the characters, the themes.
Hmm.
Really get to the bottom of what this book is all about.
And it's particularly interesting because this book is a little bit controversial,
Oh yeah.
and it's a particularly long one.
Yeah.
And so I think it's worth diving into all of that. It
Absolutely.
was published in monthly installments between 1843 and 1844.
Okay.
So
So that's kind of
that's typical.
classic Dickens
Yeah.
to have it, published kind of piecemeal like that over time.
Hmm.
But what's interesting about this one is that it wasn't like an immediate smashing success like some of his other work.
Right. And so, in fact, that led Dickens to make a pretty big change in the novel.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What did he do?
Well, so he actually, in the middle of publishing it,
Oh, wow.
he decided to send his main character
Okay.
to America.
What?
Yeah.
He just like throws in a whole
A
new
whole new plot element.
setting. And
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, that was in part because of the reaction that it was getting.
Really?
And so he decided to add in this American adventure.
Okay.
Um,
That's fascinating. So he's literally reacting to his readers in real time
he is.
and making changes to the story based on how they're responding to it.
Yeah.
No, this isn't just any trip abroad. This is Dickens sending his character to 1842 America, a
Right.
place that Dickens himself had visited
A year prior.
just a year prior. And he wasn't exactly, head over heels in love with what he saw there.
No, he wasn't.
So I can only imagine that personal experience is going to fuel some of the satire that we're going to find in Martin Chuzzlewit.
Right. It's going to be really interesting to see how his kind of personal opinions about America come through in his fictional portrayal of it.
Yeah, and he was already a literary rock star at this point.
Oh, yeah.
So his words carried weight.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's using Martin Chuzzlewit to hold a mirror up to American society,
Okay.
people are going to pay attention.
Absolutely. And people did pay attention, and it caused a lot of controversy.
Okay, so let's talk about controversy.
Yeah.
What specifically is he critiquing about American society?
So there are a few main things that he really hones in on.
Okay.
One is land fraud,
Okay.
which was
Rampant.
a huge problem at the time.
Yeah.
And he actually has his main character, Martin, fall victim to a land fraud scheme.
Okay.
Another thing that he focuses on is boasting.
Oh.
And kind of this,
Like American exceptionalism,
Yeah.
kind of a,
yeah, and just the kind of,
we're the best.
yeah, the overblown sense of pride that he perceived.
Yeah.
And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, he also takes aim at the hypocrisy surrounding slavery.
Okay.
So this is really interesting because, obviously slavery is a huge issue
Global issue.
at the time.
Yeah. And still.
And still, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's really kind of pinpointing the way in which America is claiming to be this land of freedom
Right.
while still upholding this institution of slavery.
So it's not just gentle ribbing, right? This is a full-on takedown
Yeah,
of American society and culture.
absolutely.
And like we were saying, Dickens is a global literary figure, so
Yeah.
his words carry weight. And I can only imagine that Americans were not thrilled to be portrayed in this way.
No, they were not.
So how did they react?
I mean, pretty much as you would expect.
Yeah.
There were very, very angry articles in newspapers.
Oh, wow.
He got a lot of hate mail.
Really?
Um,
For real?
for real.
Wow.
Like, people were not happy.
People were really upset.
Yeah. So it really does show the complex relationship between Britain and America
Mm-hmm.
at the time.
Yeah, and how, even though they share, a language and a history and all of that,
Right.
there's still this,
This tension.
this rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how a novel can spark that kind of heated debate.
Yeah.
Did Dickens ever, back down from this critique?
He actually did later apologize.
Oh, really?
He kind of acknowledged that maybe he'd been a little bit harsh.
Yeah.
And he even included a speech
Okay.
in later editions of the book,
Okay.
kind of giving his thoughts on the whole situation.
Interesting. So he's sort of trying to smooth things over.
Yeah, a little bit.
But for a time, Martin Chuzzlewit was this lightning rod
Yeah.
that exposed all these tensions
Uh.
between these two nations.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of international drama, biting social commentary.
Yeah.
But what about the heart of the novel itself? What's the driving force behind all these characters and all these escapades?
Well, I would say at its core, Martin Chuzzlewit is a story about selfishness.
Selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that selfishness is kind of what drives the entire plot.
So it's a theme that permeates the entire...
Yes, the whole Chuzzlewit family.
Okay.
And then it kind of ripples outward from there.
Yeah.
And affects almost all of the characters in the novel.
And Dickens doesn't just tell us about this selfishness, right?
No.
He brings it to life through these incredibly vivid and memorable characters.
Absolutely.
So, like, who are some of the key players here?
Well, I think the first one we have to talk about is Seth Pecksniff.
Oh, yeah, Seth Peck.
Who is just like the embodiment of hypocrisy.
Okay.
So he's an architect.
Okay.
And he presents himself as being very moral,
Right.
very upright.
Very pious.
Yeah, very religious.
Yeah.
But
Underneath all that.
yeah, he's actually deeply hypocritical.
Okay. So he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, basically.
Yeah, and so Dickens really paints him as this master manipulator.
Okay.
He's always twisting words,
Okay.
always trying to kind of get ahead
Yeah.
at the expense of others.
And he uses language as a tool
Yes.
to do this.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's very eloquent,
Yeah.
but he's using his eloquence to deceive people.
Yeah. And to make himself appear better
Yeah, to make himself look good.
than he really is.
Mm-hmm.
And Dickens is so good at exposing that
Yeah.
kind of that gap between
Yeah.
someone's outward appearance
Mhm.
and then their true nature. Okay, so we've got Seth Pecksniff.
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of the other kind of memorable characters that we should be paying attention to?
Well, there's also Jonas Chuzzlewit,
Okay, Jonas.
who is Seth Pecksniff's son-in-law.
Okay.
And he is the villain.
Okay, he's like the straight up bad guy.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Fine.
there's no...
No question about it.
She's obsessed with inheritance.
Okay.
He's willing to do pretty much anything
Okay.
to get ahead.
So is he like
Yeah, he's
power hungry?
hungry, greedy.
Greedy.
Greedy, okay.
So he's like another embodiment of this.
Yeah, of selfishness.
Of selfishness.
Take it to an extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But what about the protagonist? What about young Martin?
so young Martin is also a Chuzzlewit.
Okay, so he's got that Chuzzlewit blood in him.
He does?
So is he also susceptible to this selfishness?
He is initially.
Okay.
He kind of sets out on his journey,
Yeah.
driven by selfish desires,
Okay.
but he undergoes a transformation over the course of the novel.
So he's not like a static character.
He's not.
Dynamic, and he evolves
Yeah.
and changes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what are some of the things that kind of contribute to his transformation?
Well, a lot of it has to do with his experiences in America.
Okay, so America becomes this
It's like a crucible.
crucible
Yeah. For him.
for his growth.
Yeah, it forces him to kind of confront his own flaws,
Okay.
and to develop empathy for others.
Okay.
So it's not just a setting for Dickens satire.
Yeah.
It's also a place where Martin himself grows and changes.
That's fascinating. So it's almost like a double purpose
Yeah.
for that whole section of the book?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And speaking of America,
Yes.
you know, we've talked about some of the broad things that Dickens is critiquing.
Right.
But I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the specific ways in which he satirizes American society?
Yeah, so one of the things he does is he portrays these land scams
Oh, yeah.
that were happening.
Young Martin
Young Martin falls prey to one of these.
falls prey to one of these.
Oh, right.
Yes.
I remember reading that.
It's very funny.
And it's almost like slapstick.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's, going into the swamp, and he's getting eaten alive by mosquitoes.
Yeah, he's expecting this like paradise.
Right.
And it's this like awful
It's a nightmare.
swamp.
And then beyond that, I mean, are there other...
Yeah. I mean, he has a lot of like really interesting American characters.
think that's cool.
So one is Jefferson Brick,
Okay.
who is this bombastic journalist,
Okay.
just full of hot air.
So he's kind of like a representation of...
Yeah, of kind of American bluster.
Yeah. Okay.
And then another one is Mrs. Hominy.
Okay.
who is...
Mrs. Hominy, okay.
Yeah.
I have to remember that one.
So she's very interesting because she's very critical of America.
Oh, okay.
But she's also very self-promoting.
Okay.
So she's kind of this...
A walking contradiction.
Yeah.
And so he's using her to kind of show the contradictions within American society.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got all these larger-than-life characters, both in England and America, and they're all entangled in this web of selfishness and ambition.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know about the characters who aren't directly related to the Chuzzlewit family.
Yeah.
Like, where do they fit into this?
Yeah, so there are some really interesting supporting characters.
Okay.
And they're just as compelling and complex
Okay.
as the main players.
Okay, so who are some of these supporting characters?
Well, there's Mark Tapley, who is this eternally cheerful employee.
I love already that he's eternally cheerful
Yeah,
because it's Dickens, so you know there's got to be some darkness somewhere.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about Mark Tapley is he's constantly seeking out difficult circumstances.
What? Why would he do that?
Yeah. So he believes that true joy
Okay.
can only be achieved when you're facing adversity. There.
That's an interesting philosophy.
It's a very unique philosophy.
Yeah.
Like,
He's going out of his way to make his life harder
He is.
so that he can experience
So that he can be truly joyful.
true joy.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And guess what? He ends up going to America with Martin.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So he's kind of like this constant reminder
Okay.
of the potential for good,
Yeah.
even in the most trying of situations.
Wow. Okay, so Mark Tapley,
Mhm.
eternal optimist,
Yes.
seeking out adversity.
Yes.
All right, who else should we be paying attention to?
Another one is Tom Pinch,
Okay.
who is just this incredibly kind
Okay.
and gentle soul.
Okay.
But he is exploited by Pecksniff.
Of course he is. He's like the perfect target.
He
Just
is.
for someone like Pecksniff.
Yeah, he's so trusting.
Yeah.
And so Pecksniff really takes advantage of him. But Tom,
He seems like the moral compass
Yeah.
of this whole novel.
yeah,
He's like the one good guy.
he's the one who kind of,
Yeah.
maintains his integrity.
Yeah.
Throughout all of this.
So Tom Pinch,
Mm-hmm.
exploited but good.
Yes.
And then there's Mrs. Gamp.
Mrs. Gamp.
Yes.
Now, I have heard her name actually became slang for an umbrella.
It did.
How did that happen?
Well, so Mrs. Gamp is this like larger than life,
Okay.
kind of unreliable
Yeah.
nurse.
Okay.
And she's often seen carrying this big unwieldy umbrella.
Okay.
And so her umbrella kind of became this symbol of her,
Oh, okay.
like her personality.
It represents her.
It represents her, yeah.
Okay.
And so eventually,
It became slang.
I met him. Yeah.
Wow.
So Mrs. Gamp,
Mm-hmm.
unreliable nurse,
Yes.
giant umbrella.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to get a picture of this.
Yeah.
This whole cast of characters.
Mm.
So we've got this incredible ensemble,
Mm-hmm.
each with their own quirks and motivations.
Yeah.
But how do their stories all intertwine? Like, what are some of the key plot points
Right.
that really drive this story forward?
Well, Martin Chuzzlewit is full of twists and turns.
Okay.
So
So we're going to need like a whole separate episode just to unpack all
Yeah.
the plot twists?
yeah. But I mean, just to give you a few examples.
Okay.
There's Jonas's descent into crime.
Okay, we talked about that a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
that he was
He gets worse.
willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also the revelation of old Martin's true intentions,
Ooh,
which is very surprising.
where he's got some secrets.
He does.
Okay.
And then there are a lot of romances
Oh, okay.
that unfold.
All right, so love and marriage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a roller coaster of emotions.
It is.
It really
It's
is.
Vince.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've set the stage.
Yeah.
We've met the players.
Now it's time to really dive into the heart of Martin Chuzzlewit
Yeah.
and see what makes this novel such a, a timeless masterpiece.
Absolutely.
All right, well, buckle up.
Buckle up. We talked about Seth Pecksniff
Mm-hmm.
and how he's this master of hypocrisy.
Oh, yeah, he's like the poster child for hypocrisy.
He really is.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth exploring, what makes him such a compelling character.
Okay, yeah.
Like beyond just being a villain.
Yeah, he's definitely more than just a one-dimensional bad guy.
Right.
So what is it about Pecksniff that makes him so fascinating?
Well, I think one of the things is that Dickens doesn't just tell us he's a hypocrite.
Mhm.
He shows us through his
Point.
actions and his words.
Yeah.
And he does this really effectively through Pecksniff's persona.
Okay.
Like, remember how Dickens describes him as having this moral atmosphere?
Oh, yeah.
It's so over the top,
Yeah.
and it's completely at odds with his actions.
Right. It's like this delicious irony that we as readers are in on.
Exactly. Like we're watching this performance,
Yeah.
knowing that the actor is a fraud.
And that makes it even more entertaining.
It does.
And then there's the way that Pecksniff manipulates language.
Oh, yeah.
He uses all these lofty words and moral platitudes to justify his actions.
Right, to deflect any criticism.
Yeah, he's like a master of spin.
He is.
Even back in the Victorian era.
Yeah, but it's not just his words.
Right.
It's his actions, too.
Yeah.
And I think the best example of this is his relationship with Tom Pinch.
Poor Tom Pinch.
I know.
Who is just completely devoted to this guy.
Yeah.
Despite all the evidence pointing to his true nature.
Right, and Tom's, like, unwavering loyalty.
Yeah.
Despite being constantly exploited.
Yeah.
It's both heartbreaking and frustrating.
It really is. You just want to shake him and say, open your eyes.
I know.
But of course, that's part of what makes Tom such a sympathetic character.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's so innocent.
Yeah.
Naive. That you can't help but feel for him.
And it's like Dickens is setting him up
Yeah.
to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I think he is.
But also, I think Tom represents this inherent goodness that Dickens believed existed even in a world that's full of corruption and deceit.
Right, and Tom's eventual realization of Pecksniff's true nature is such a pivotal moment.
Yeah, it's like a coming of age in a way.
It is.
Speaking of journeys, let's circle back to young Martin and his American adventure.
Okay.
It's clearly a vehicle for Dickens' satire of American society. But what else is going on beneath the surface? Like, what's the deeper purpose of sending Martin across the Atlantic?
Well, on one level, it allows Dickens to really indulge in his witty critiques of American culture.
Yeah.
You know, he pokes fun at their obsession with money-making.
Right.
Their overblown sense of national pride.
Yeah.
Even their tendency toward grandiose language.
And let's not forget those hilarious scenes where Martin falls prey to the land scab.
Oh, yes.
Ending up in this mosquito-infested swamp.
Right.
That's the complete opposite of the paradise that he was promised.
Yeah. But I think beyond the humor, Martin's American journey is also a coming-of-age story.
Okay. So
it's a process of disillusionment and growth.
So America acts as a kind of mirror, reflecting back Martin's own shortcomings.
Exactly. It's a place where his preconceived notions are challenged.
Okay.
And he's forced to grapple with the harsh realities of a world that's very different from the one he's used to.
And it's not just the external challenges that shape him, right? I mean, his interactions with other characters, like Mark Tapley, also play a crucial role in his transformation.
They do.
So what is it about Mark Tapley's personality that rubs off on young Martin?
Well, I think it's Mark's unwavering optimism.
Okay.
You know, even in the face of adversity. He's like this constant reminder of the power of positive thinking.
And that's something that Martin is really lacking.
Yeah, he is,
at the beginning of the novel.
Yeah, yeah. And so Mark is slowly chipping away at Martin's defenses.
So it's like Mark's cheerfulness is infectious.
Yeah. I think it is.
And Martin can't help but be affected by it.
I think that's a good way to put it.
And they develop a real bond.
They do. Yeah, it starts out as a master-servant relationship, but it becomes a real friendship.
Yeah, I mean, they're going through this incredibly intense experience together.
Yeah, especially in that malaria-ridden Eden.
It's interesting how Dickens uses that name Eden.
I know.
Ironically.
It is.
Right. Like contrasting this idyllic image with the harsh reality of that settlement.
Right. And that's Dickens for you. He loves to play with our expectations.
He does.
Yeah.
And challenge us to look beyond the surface. This is what makes Martin Chuzzlewit so much more than just a simple adventure story.
Right. It's this complex tapestry of social commentary, satire, and personal journeys of transformation.
Exactly. And those journeys aren't limited to the male characters.
Right.
The female characters in Martin Chuzzlewit are just as richly developed and compelling.
They are.
Let's talk about them.
Okay.
We've got Mary Graham, who's clearly more than just a love interest for young Martin.
Right.
Like, what's her role in all of this?
Well, I think Mary embodies a lot of the qualities that are lacking in many of the other characters.
Right.
Like, she's compassionate, she's kind,
Okay.
and she's fiercely loyal.
Okay.
And she acts as kind of a moral compass.
Okay.
Not just for young Martin, but for old Martin as well.
So she's a catalyst for change.
Yeah, I think she is.
Helping both Martins to see the world and themselves in a new light.
Right.
Okay, and then there's Ruth Pinch,
Yes.
who is Tom Pinch's sister.
Yes.
She's another character who embodies this goodness and resilience.
Yeah, despite facing hardship and being taken advantage of, she maintains her integrity and eventually finds happiness.
Okay.
And then there's Mercy Pecksniff.
Oh, yes.
Who is Seth Pecksniff's daughter.
Right.
She starts off as this kind of frivolous,
kind of
naive young woman. But her character undergoes a significant transformation.
It does.
Over the course of the novel.
Yeah, her marriage to Jonas Chuzzlewit. Which initially seems like a fairy tale.
Yeah, you think, oh, this is going to be great.
Right. That quickly turns sour.
Yeah.
And she's exposed to the darker side of human nature.
Yeah.
But she finds a strength that she didn't know she possessed.
So it's like she's forced to grow up
and
confront the realities of the world.
Right. And in a way, her journey mirrors young Martin's.
Okay.
They both experience disillusionment and growth.
Albeit through very different paths.
So we've got these compelling female characters, each navigating their own challenges, contributing to the novel's exploration of human nature, societal ills. Yeah. But what about the overarching plot? Like, what are some of the key turning points?
Okay, so Martin Chuzzlewit is full of dramatic twists and turns.
Give me some examples.
Okay, so one of the most pivotal moments is the revelation of old Martin's true intentions.
Okay, yeah.
So he's been playing a long game.
So he's like the puppet master.
Yeah, he's observing the behavior of those around him.
Okay.
And his actions have this ripple effect on everyone involved.
Okay.
And then there's Jonas Chuzzlewit's descent into crime.
Right.
His obsession with wealth and power leads him down a very dark path.
Okay.
And then, of course, there are the various romances that unfold throughout the novel.
Okay.
There's the passionate love between young Martin and Mary Graham. The unrequited love of Tom Pinch for Mary.
Oh, poor Tom Pinch.
I know. And then the unexpected romance that blossoms between Ruth Pinch and John Westlock.
Okay, so Dickens is giving us a whole spectrum of love and relationships.
Yeah, from the idealistic to the heartbreaking to the practical.
And through all of this, he's exploring themes of selflessness and sacrifice.
Right, because true love, in Dickens' view, is about putting the needs of another before one's own.
Which is a stark contrast to the self-serving motivations that drive so many of the other characters.
Right, and I think that's really what Dickens is trying to get at with this novel.
Yeah, he wasn't just trying to tell an entertaining story.
No, he was trying to explore fundamental questions about human nature.
Yeah.
Morality.
The complexities of society.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so enduring.
And it's so relevant.
Yeah.
Even though it was written over 180 years ago,
I know.
It still speaks to us today. It does. As we wrap up our deep dive, I think it's worth highlighting just how skillfully Dickens weaves his social commentary into the story.
Yeah, he's not just like lecturing us about the ills of society. Well, he's showing us the consequences.
Yeah.
Greed and hypocrisy.
Through these characters?
To these characters, yeah. So, for example...
Like Tom Pinch?
Tom Pinch, yeah.
He's such a poignant representation of the working class.
Yeah.
He's exploited by people like Pecksniff.
Right.
Forced to endure hardship and humiliation.
But he never loses his goodness.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
No, he really represents that inherent dignity.
Yeah, he's like the moral center of the book in a lot of ways.
I think so.
And it's like... Dickens is forcing us to look at the realities of poverty and crass inequality. And Dickens doesn't stop there.
No.
He also takes aim at these institutions.
Yeah, like the church.
The church.
The legal system.
Yeah.
And he's showing how they're all corrupt.
Yeah, he's really, peeling back these layers of respectability to show the rot.
The rot underneath.
Yeah, underneath.
And he uses his satire to really... challenge the status quo.
Yeah, he's making us question these figures of authority.
Yeah.
And it's not just institutions. He also tackles issues of gender and race.
Right.
So, highlighting the limited opportunities for women.
Yeah, the prejudice.
Prejudice, yeah. And I think it's important to remember that Dickens is writing during a time of great social upheaval. So his work reflects that.
Yeah, this growing awareness of these inequalities.
And it's a call for social reform.
It is.
But it's not all doom and gloom.
No. There's also hope.
There's hope. There's redemption. And we see characters like young Martin and Mercy Pecksniff, you know, learning from their mistakes.
Transforming.
Yeah, becoming better.
Yeah.
And that's really important to Dickens.
I think so.
This idea of personal growth.
Yeah.
And the possibility of a more just and equitable society. And it's those moments of growth that are often tied to human connection.
Right. Even amidst the selfishness.
Yeah.
There's kindness.
There's love.
Love. Loyalty.
Yeah. And characters like Mark Tapley and Tom Pinch.
Yeah.
They represent that.
They do.
The best of humanity.
Yeah. And they remind us that there's always hope.
Yeah.
Even in the darkest of times.
So what would you say is the lasting legacy?
Oh, that's a big question.
Of Martin Chuzzlewit.
Well, I think it's a testament to Dickens' genius.
Okay.
As a storyteller.
Yeah.
And a social critic.
Yeah.
It challenges us.
It inspires us.
It inspires us.
Yeah, and it's relevant today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, his themes of greed, hypocrisy, the struggle for social justice
still resonate.
They do.
Dickens reminds us that the fight for a better world is ongoing.
It is.
And that we all have a role to play. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure diving into Martin Chuzzlewit with you.
Likewise.
We've uncovered layers of meaning.
We have.
Explored complex characters. And hopefully sparked some insightful reflections.
I hope so.
Along the way.
Yeah, it's a book that really stays with you.
It does. And I think it deserves
to be read.
To be read again and again.
Yeah.
So on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this journey into the world of Charles Dickens.
And
until next time, keep diving deep.